Good morning, everybody. Morning, friends and colleagues. Welcome to the first of 2 days on Who Owns Childcare, Who Should Own Childcare. I'm Susan Prentice, and I'm very pleased to welcome you to the campus of the University of Manitoba. We're meeting today on the original lands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Red River Métis. The water we will drink and use today and tomorrow travels 300 kilometers by aqueduct from the Shoal Lake 40 First Nations near Kenora, and we thank them for the water. I am particularly grateful to Alexander Kennedy Isbister, a Métis man from Cumberland House who grew up in the Red River Valley. Isbister was a lawyer, and he left his personal book collection to the University of Manitoba. His 5,000 books were our first library. For 30 years, my office has been in a building named in honor of this distinguished educator, author, and champion of Métis rights. Today, excellent students still win the Isbister Scholarship, a legacy of his generosity 141 years ago. This campus is also the home of the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation, and it holds the archived testimonies of residential school survivors. The university is honored that we were chosen to steward the NCTR collection and to participate in the truth-telling and healing. We're spending today and tomorrow here in this room, the Marshall McLuhan Hall. Yes, that Marshall McLuhan, he of The Medium is the Message, and the person who coined the phrase, the Global Village. McLuhan grew up in Winnipeg and attended this university where he earned 2 degrees. Our 2-day event has been developed and organized with support of the Duff Roblin Professor of Government, the Shirk Partnership Grant, Reimagining Care Work Policies, and the Childcare Resource and Research Unit. And helping us with logistics today are students Sarah Fair and Kenya Thompson, and CRRU staffie Alexi Cossett. You might have met them, but Sarah and Alexi are over there, and here is Sarah. We have an intrepid team of AV support from Teddy and Chris. We all think you've received a program, and there are print copies on your tables to help us with timekeeping. On housekeeping, you'll notice that we're broadcasting. We're over Zoom, where 168 folks have registered to watch today's symposium and learn along with us. We are recording this event for future use and to help us prepare a post-symposium report. We all need to use these mics, including using the mics when we have Q&A in the audience so that the audio and Zoom folks catch it. We're having our refreshment breaks here, and we've arranged for more food for future meals. Apologies to everybody who couldn't get a pastry. Washrooms are located there, and there are more downstairs. There's a bookstore, a pharmacy, and a small convenience store downstairs, because you just never know. And you're welcome to find me or one of the helpers if you need assistance of any kind. Our event today is happening because all across Canada, early learning and childcare services are in big transition. Under unprecedented federal investments and interest, spurred by the hard lessons taught by a pandemic which made it clear how much the formal economy rests on caregiving, childcare services are poised for big transformation. As the cost of childcare tumbles down to $10 a day, and this week, Monday, marked 1 year of $10 a day care for licensed preschool, nonprofit preschool here in Manitoba, the next policy frontier is how to ensure expansion so that all children and families have access to the quality care they need and want. How will we create badly needed early learning childcare spaces? Who currently owns childcare? Who will own childcare, and who should own childcare? And inevitably, by corollary, who perhaps should not own childcare? To set the stage for these questions and today, I'm pleased to introduce the rest of the panel. Martha Friendly, the Executive Director of the Childcare Resource and Research Unit, and Morna Ballantyne, Executive Director of Childcare Now. Martha will be sketching out our starting points and what we hope to accomplish from these 2 days of exploration. Morna will then provide a quick overview of the lay of the land and the current state of learning. But after Martha and before Morna, I'm especially delighted that we've been unexpectedly able to welcome a special speaker. Many of you will know Michelle Lattimore, Director General of the Early Learning and Childcare Secretariat of Employment and Social Development in Ottawa, and she will also get to speak a few words this morning. So with that, Martha.
Okay. So, can I just ask, is the sun bothering anybody? I see some people, like I said, so does anybody want to move before we go on? You're okay with it, okay. So anything bothering anybody, just ask. I just have a few notes to try to put this into context. So I want to start by saying that the starting point for this symposium, and we called it a symposium, we wanted it to be small, and it's turned out, looks just like what we had hoped it would look like, so thank you very much everybody who's here. The starting point is with where the Sewell policy as it's being rolled out. So the childcare movement was very thrilled when the federal government framed the policy and the funding as primarily public and nonprofit childcare, because that was one of the issues of the childcare movement as long as I can remember, and that's the starting point. So we're not debating, any other issues other than that. We're starting there, although we will be having a panel on for-profit childcare and questions on it. So that's the starting point. The second thing I want to talk about is the idea of ownership, the term we used intentionally, because it is true that there's different pieces of ownership in the whole picture of childcare. And when we use the term ownership with nonprofits, it is the nonprofit board who owns the childcare. So there will be some discussion about ownership of the operation and of the resources, the facilities, and all those kinds of things. This is a pivotal issue as we expand, even with the proviso that it should primarily be public and nonprofit. Yet there's been very little real digging down into the issues, the challenges, and the opportunities, because there are opportunities. So they're not really being as fully addressed as they might be. So then, I just want to say that third, that the motivation for our holding this is to flesh out those issues at this particular time when it's so important. And we really want to stimulate policy and public debate about these issues. And this would be among us, amongst the policymakers, the public, because they're very important issues. We will know that we have 3 international experts with us who will touch on some of will be talking about these issues. So we know from places with more mature childcare systems and countries that are going through this, how important the issues of who owns childcare and who should own childcare are. So what we have here are 2 days. One day that we have a virtual participation, and then tomorrow, which I'll sort of describe a little bit, and we'll sort of shape out more tomorrow. But I want to emphasize that this is exploratory. It's not that nobody has talked about these issues before, but the way we really want to start digging into them is exploratory. We want to surface what the sub-issues are. There are many, many issues that come up attached to ownership, and we want to take note of them, take note of what needs more research, what needs more discussion, where we can go with all of these issues. So nothing that we're going to be doing is definitive either today or in any of our discussion tomorrow. What we'll do at the end is we're going to take all of the content and we're going to try to shape it into a useful let's call it a report or reports. We don't know exactly what it's going to be yet. And to actually start, sort of saying, this is where we need more research. This is where we need more discussion. This is where we know a lot. This is what we're learning from other places. So that's what the nature of it is. So everything goes. Feel free to bring up any issues that you feel are relevant to this. And I guess I just want to end by saying, I'll just say first that, as you know from the program, we've divided this into 3 panels. One panel on public delivery of childcare first, then not for-profit delivery, excuse me, and then a panel on nonprofit childcare. Tomorrow, we'll be having facilitated discussion facilitated by Morna, on 4 different kind of general policy topics, which we'll be digging down into in the course of the day with free-flowing conversation. And I want to close by just commenting on who's here, that it's a great mixture of people in government, academics, researchers, practitioners, people from different pieces of childcare. We have found, and this really reflects our partnership grant, because these SSHRC partnership grants are a partnership between academia and the community, and this one very much is. So there are a lot of people here who are connected to the partnership grant. Susan and I chair the childcare cluster of it, but there's other people who are connected to it as investigators or as partners, or I think there's 1 or 2 collaborators, which I always think is quite a funny term, but there's 1 or 2 collaborators here. And this is what the childcare movement in Canada looks like. And I think this is where we've been able to get such great movement and understanding of the issues. So for what that's worth, that's what the shape of the day and tomorrow looks like. And we have a lot to talk about. Thank you.
What a privilege it is to be at this table. Thank you for the invitation to say something. I was the Director General of Results and Delivery Policy at the Privy Council office in the summer of 2021 when Catherine Adam, who was the Senior ADM of Strategic and Social Policy at ESDC, sent me a text and asked me if I would be interested in coming to lead the new federal secretariat on early learning and childcare. And honestly, I think I responded a little bit flippantly at the time because who wouldn't want to do that? Who wouldn't want the opportunity to be part of what had been decades-long work led by so many of you in this room to lead just the most transformative social policy work this country has seen in decades. And so I've known Catherine for a long time and I guess took it as a joke at first, but it turned out she was being serious. And I had this opportunity to leave a job and a team that I really loved to come and work on something that somehow I would come to love even more. And the potential also to translate, I think, what we were doing at PCO in results and delivery to the other side of the fence, to see how that could really work from a departmental perspective, to see how you could build results when the tools are actually in your hands, or in the case of working with provinces and territories, sometimes not in your hands at all. But that's a whole other element to it. Coming to work in ELCC meant the opportunity to be part of something that was truly, truly transformative. And yet, I think if you, and I'm sure you have, had been paying close attention to the news cycle through January and February of this year, or if you were among the small group of people, at least one of them being my mom, who were watching last month when Minister Suds moved in the House to concur a motion with Senate amendments to Bill C-35, our early learning and childcare bill. You may have thought, looking at all of that work, that in fact something had gone spectacularly wrong. And the opposition critic, Madame Ferrari, presented in the House with spectacular flair a pile of documents reflecting a system that has been widely panned as unraveling, as leading to closures in childcare centers in Alberta, in Ontario, as one that systemically discriminates against families in official language minority communities, against children with individualized needs, that is spectacularly terrible. I'm all for brutal transparency, and certainly for assuming the responsibility when things don't go as planned. And I think that's actually key to delivering on results. And as Ms. Ferrari interestingly noted in her opening remarks, it is her job to say these things. And I understand that as the opposition critic. But politics aside, I genuinely don't think that what we have in front of us is a picture of things that have gone terribly, terribly wrong. And I think it's actually the opposite. It's not perfect, certainly. But over the course of the last number of years, we have gone from something very conceptual to a $30 billion program, more billions coming, as per announcements last week, supported by soon-to-be 39 bilateral agreements, 23 Canada-wide action plans, dozens of maturing trilateral relationships with Indigenous partners, layered with federal legislation that has received now royal assent, a fully established multilateral governance structure, a national advisory council. All of these pieces working together, though not seamlessly, but working together to deliver average $10 a day care in 8 provinces and territories, 50% fee reductions in the rest of the provinces, and as you've heard most recently, over 100,000 spaces announced across the country. So at minimum, I would say that it's worth taking a moment to celebrate that, to reflect on, and I think the next 2 days are an opportunity to do that, to reflect on the work that we've done to mobilize each other as partners to come together to achieve really extraordinary things. The fact that good things take time, hard things are hard, but the importance of leaning into the discomfort of that, and about how at the core of this, I think, is the work that we all do as leaders within our own domains to build relationships and to build trust. And that's really how Steph, who I can't see because there's a column in front of her, but my colleague Steph, who is here with me from the Federal Secretariat, that's how she and I are showing up today. Just so grateful to have been welcomed into your community. So happy to see so many of you in 3 dimensions for the first time, and to meet many others. And really just here to listen and to learn and to work together to continue to build extraordinary things. Thanks for the opportunity.
Good morning, everybody. Great to be here. And also, good morning and maybe afternoon or near afternoon to people online. It's great to be here representing Childcare Now, Canada's National Childcare Advocacy Association. I want to really thank Susan and Martha and everybody who worked to make this symposium happen. So Susan and Martha asked me to, I can't even remember what you asked me to do, the lay of the land. And then they said, but you have 5 minutes. So, and I've been really struggling with what to say because first of all of you are very, very well informed about what the situation is right now in Canada with respect to early learning and childcare. And Michelle, you've already laid some of the groundwork in your remarks. So I'm going to just say a few words that may be a bit of sort of high level. where are we at with respect to early learning and childcare? Well, first, I'm glad Michelle, that you raised the very disturbing narrative that's being played out in the media, particularly at the beginning of 2024, that it's a failed program, that there's chaos and all kinds of other negative descriptors for what's going on. And I would like to really offer a different perspective, similar to, I think, what Michelle just offered. So, in summary, what is happening right now, or where are we at? And you know this, so forgive me for repeating. We now have licensed early learning and childcare that is affordable for most families across the country. That is a stunning achievement in a very short period of time, since 2021. We have limited access, unfortunately, to this now much more affordable childcare. Wait lists are long, they're growing longer, and I know that certain conservative pundits don't like it when we say this, but in many respects, the long wait lists and the fact that so many families want to get in is a sign of the success, the popularity of the program, and confirmation that this is the right thing to do. The availability of not-for-profit and public childcare services is particularly scarce, and that's a problem. We're witnessing very many and extremely positive changes in Indigenous early learning and childcare, I think largely because of the process and the work that was done by Indigenous governments and the federal government working in collaboration to develop a framework, and not just a framework, often it's referred in shorthand to an Indigenous framework, but a Métis framework, an Inuit framework, and a First Nations framework, and they are distinct frameworks. And the federal government has committed to funding the implementation and rollout of this framework and really move towards the commitment and honoring of self-government. Incredible achievement, again, in a short period of time. Expansion of the system is slow. We know this. And although the federal government's commitment is to build a primarily not-for-profit and public system of ELCC, the for-profit childcare sector continues to grow. That's a problem. Many operators of licensed ELCC programs in the not-for-profit sector and in the for-profit sector are struggling through these early days of system building, largely a result of models of funding and approaches to the system being outdated and not moving and improving and developing quickly enough. The workforce, as we know, is struggling. So wages for ECEs and other staff, but mostly for ECEs, have increased significantly across the country, or at least in many cases significantly. Some provinces and territories have introduced wage grids, and those provide rewards for skills upgrading, and they recognized the value of increased experience in programs, these wage grids, and that's a good thing. Some provinces in this respect are doing better than others, and I want to signal out that PEI, by many and maybe all accounts, has solved the problem of retention. In some of you may have different opinions, but that's what the general account is. And it's really important to get into the details of why that is, because there are many things that have contributed to this, probably including the size of PEI. In some jurisdictions, governments have improved benefits and introduced pensions, and here I want to, again, make special mention of Nova Scotia, which has introduced a defined benefit pension plan for those who work in early learning and childcare. It is difficult for any group, any sector of employees to achieve a defined benefit plan, pension plan, or keep their defined pension plan. They're under attack and scrutiny across the country. But in Nova Scotia, those who work in early learning and childcare effective April 1st and over the next year will be enrolled in a good defined benefit plan, one that's secure, and also a province-wide group benefit plan with the government funding all employer contributions, and Nova Scotia increase the wages of ECEs to correspond with the introduction of the pension and benefit coverage so that the cost of the premiums will be absolutely absorbed through a wage increase in addition to a general wage increase. In all jurisdictions, we've seen a range of measures to graduate more early childhood educators. These are all positive results. But generally, there hasn't been enough done to address the very difficult working conditions in this sector. And compensation generally continues to be low and not competitive. And because of the shortage of qualified early childhood educators, in fact, we've seen a greater reliance on unqualified or not fully qualified staff to keep programs open. That's a problem. We've moved very quickly, and I think this is probably the most important systemic change that we've seen since 2021, that we are now a country that has a primarily publicly funded system of licensed childcare, which with most of the public funding, not all, but most of the public funding directed to the supply side of the childcare market. So we've moved very quickly to a situation where most childcare providers receive almost all their operational funding from governments and not-for-parent fees. And this raises huge opportunities and challenges. So it presents and gives, what we have through this is the opportunity to significantly increase the quality of programs without increasing parent fees. We have never before been in this situation. We have the opportunity to ensure, because it's publicly funded, that those who operate programs are properly funded and supported by government. Let's remember that parent fees would never supply adequate funding to offer high-quality programs. We also now have the opportunity for provinces and territories to publicly manage the supply of childcare and to make those who are providing childcare publicly accountable. It's no longer a private activity because it's publicly funded. And their governments can ensure that the provision of childcare is inclusive of all children and responsive to the needs of every child. The opportunity to plan is also there, as the opportunity rises now with publicly funding for governments to plan the expansion of regulated childcare in both the short and the long term. So for example, there's the opportunity now for governments to ensure that priority is given to populations, regions, and communities that are now underserved by the childcare system. And importantly, full public funding provides the basis and the mechanism for ensuring that the ELCC workforce is qualified and properly compensated. And it provides the mechanisms for supporting and encouraging not-for-profit and public service growth and curbing the growth of for-profit provision. But of course, public funding alone does not guarantee that all of these opportunities will be seized and realized. We need sufficient public funding. We need public funding formulas and other mechanisms, including improved regulation, that is designed to achieve these objectives. And that's the big challenge. And those are the questions that come with it that I hope we will be addressing. How do we make sure that we use the public funding to build the best and the right system? How do we ensure that the billions of dollars of public funds that are now being expended by the federal government will be used to build and finance a high-quality Canada-wide system of early learning and childcare? How do we ensure that the public funds are not siphoned off for profit? How do we ensure that the childcare facilities and the other assets that are now going to be paid for by the public are publicly owned and controlled? How do we ensure that the level of public funding is actually sufficient? How do we ensure that it isn't only the federal government that is significantly increasing each year its spending on early learning and childcare? And I think we're all grappling with these questions or similar related questions. Some of you work in government, some of you work in the sector, some of you are providers, some of you are policy analysts, and I know there are a few economists in the room and probably online. Together, I like to believe we are all childcare advocates, and that together we grapple these questions, we come to some answers, and that way we will actually see the answers implemented and all of these challenges and opportunities met. Thank you.
So thank you all for these lovely opening remarks. This sets the stage for getting us started. We're a little bit ahead of the schedule, which is a good thing because the morning panel, the first morning panel on public delivery is one I'm especially looking forward to. So we'll come down, that panel will come up, we'll get set, and off we go to think about the next stage of questions for who owns childcare, who should own childcare, and how do we be sure we get the system that we want.
And say there'll be an opportunity for some discussion after the end.
Martha reminds me to tell you that there will be lots of opportunity for discussion. If you're moved to ask or comment now, I guess I should invite you to do that. But mainly we're imagining a lot of questions after the panel presentations. They've all been timed to allow a good Q&A afterwards. Again, a Q&A that needs the mic so that people online and people in the recording will get to hear it. But tomorrow is where we really will then dive deep. And there are no formal presentations tomorrow. It's all working with the knowledge and expertise in this room. So